Welcome back to the Richard Sherman podcast. Another incredible week, inching closer and closer to these playoffs, and a lot of things happened this week. A lot of games that had some expected outcomes and others not so expected. The Philadelphia Eagles lose to the Washington Commanders, lose Jalen Hurts early in that ball game. That's going to be something to monitor. That helped the Washington Commanders. Even the Philadelphia Eagles have not yet secured this division yet, if I'm not mistaken. I think there's still a chance for the Washington Commanders to pull it out. Now, it's a long shot because the Eagles play Dallas and the Giants to finish the season, but there's a lot of things that can happen. The Buffalo Bills had a really crazy scare from the New England Patriots, a game that should have been a walk-away blowout. Was a dogfight down to the last seconds, an onside kick recovered by Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen does not have an MVP performance. Mitchell, your Detroit Lions find a way, though.
They're back, and Richard, I'm back, fresh off of laryngitis last week. I apologize. I missed last week's episodes, guys. I could not talk, and Richard heard me talk on the phone. It was not pretty, and I was fired up to watch these games. I mean, from a Detroiter standpoint, I was rooting heavily for your Seattle Seahawks. It looked like everything was going right for Seattle. It's vintage Seattle. You know, Geno Smith throwing for over 300 yards, and Jackson Smith and Jigba looks like a star in the making for the Seattle Seahawks team, but it's just not enough, and they needed to win badly, and they go down to almighty Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson late in this game. Your thoughts, what went wrong for the Seattle Seahawks down the stretch?
A lot of things went wrong, Mitchell. A lot of things went wrong, starting with the turnovers. You can't have them, and obviously the last one was to clinch the game. Trying to find DK Metcalf deep down the field. They were playing what looked like a form of too deep, just keeping a shell on the defense, not allowing a big play. Geno wanted it bad. He forced it in there. Unfortunately, that's what happened. He was under duress most of the day, managed to throw for 315 yards, 3 touchdowns, but the 2 interceptions were the difference in the ball game. Your boy K9 only had 8 carries, but had 31 yards, had a few breakout runs there, but just played from behind for a lot of this game and was chasing the Minnesota Vikings for a good portion of this game. So had to throw the ball 43 times. Again, like you said, JSN had another really consistent, really good game, 8 catches for 95 yards. In the touchdown, had one really incredible grab in traffic, got up flexing, great catch. He's starting to develop into one of the better receivers in the National Football League. Obviously, DK had his touchdown, 3 catches for 57 yards. Jaron Reed, Boye Mafe, Derek Hall all record a sack against a really good Minnesota Vikings offensive line. Sam Darnold just continues to amaze and astound. If this was a different life, people would be talking about potential MVP for Sam Darnold, but this isn't that life. And it's just a really good, feel-good story right now. Sam Darnold, 22 of 35, 246, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Aaron Jones, 18 carries, 67 yards, another 3 catches for 26 yards. But Justin Jefferson, the guy you had to find an answer for, the guy you had to stop in this game, 10 catches for 144 yards and the 2 touchdowns. That is what killed him. Obviously, the dagger 39-yard touchdown at the end of the game into cover 2. I wasn't sure what happened on that play. It looked like Jordan Love was trying to kind of give presence to the middle of the field, but you can't give presence in that situation. You got to get over to Justin Jefferson. It looked like Reek funneled him in, even got a lot of depth to make sure it wasn't a big window. Sam Darnold got pressured, moved up in the pocket, found that window, darted it in there. No air under the ball. If there was any air under the ball, I think Julian Love would have picked it. There wasn't any air. It was a dime. That was the difference in the game at the end. Obviously, people talk about the missed field goal, but that was a long, long, long field goal, 60-yarder that they tried to attempt to tie the game. I don't think anybody expected that one. It'd been nice if it would have went. But 60-yarder to tie the game is tough from anybody. They had a chance to go down there. I think the defense made enough stops in the second half to give the offense a chance. Unfortunately, the missed field goal and the interception are what doomed them. I mean, the Seahawks couldn't ask for to be in better position going near the end of that game. Had the ball a little backed up. but with a chance to win the ball game, or at least drive down and tie it. That interception was a gut punch. It really, 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 really killed the momentum. It killed everything. Killed the hopes of the Seattle Seahawks, at least for this season. I don't think they're mathematically eliminated. I think if the Rams lose and some other crazy stuff happens, there's a chance they could get in. But just a disappointing game for how well they played on both sides of the football, the plays they made. Obviously the Minnesota Vikings are a 12-win ball club coming into this game. So it shows that Seattle Seahawks can play with anybody. They can keep the quarterback upright. They can cover with the best of them. Justin Jefferson is one of the best, if not the best receiver in the National Football League. Reek was with him step for step in a lot of these routes. Obviously, that was a cover two they called where they scored the touchdown. And there was he got beat on a couple, but you expect that. This is the best receiver in the National Football League. He's going to get his too. That's why you play the game. But the two interceptions by Dallas Turner and Theo Jackson are what ended up being the difference in this ball game. When you have a game like this, you have to execute on all cylinders. You have to be hitting on all cylinders in order to win this game. Seattle Seahawks weren't. The Minnesota Vikings were. They are now 13-2. They host the Green Bay Packers next week in a really, really pivotal game in that division. If they find a way to win that, there is a big, big, big time game with the Detroit Lions coming up that will decide perhaps the number one seed in the NFC. That's going to be crazy.
It's insane to me that this team is 13-2. I feel like they're not talked about enough. They deserve to be talked about more. They are, and they've always been a competitive team. It doesn't matter, who's at the helm. Like, clearly, I mean, Kirk Cousins led this team for years, and now you sub in Sam Darnold, who's had a resurgence, a career revitalization. This team's locked and loaded, and they're so well coached defensively. They can gun anyone. And you go on the road against Seattle, who desperately needs a win. And by the way, Richard, they are not eliminated. They go on the road, like you said, and play against these lowly Chicago Bears, who we saw the Detroit Lions beat up on today. And then they finish up in what could be a deciding factor game at the end of the season against the LA Rams. I don't know the tiebreakers. I'm not that guru just yet. I'd have to check exactly what has to go on here for the Seattle Seahawks to make the playoffs. But if it comes down to it, and the Seattle Seahawks have to play the LA Rams for that final week, a play-in game potentially, I mean, Richard, this could be, this is exactly what the NFL wants at the tail end of the season. They say why they schedule these division games at the end. The fact that the Detroit Lions at 13-2 and the Minnesota Vikings at 13-2 are fighting for the one seed, and one of these teams is not going to have home field advantage in week one of the playoffs is a complete and utter joke. I would say confidently right now, these are the two best teams in the NFC. But the fact that two teams in the NFC North are both 13-2, and it could potentially come down to that final week in Detroit, it is madness. And this is exactly what the NFL wants. Let's talk more about the Detroit game, because obviously this team has been, oh my goodness. I mean, to say they've been injured is an understatement. 22 guys on the IR entering this week. The next closest team was 16. I mean, by a comparative factor for all the listeners out there, the Detroit Lions have 22 guys on IR. The team they played last week, the Buffalo Bills, have a total of 3. It's a battle of attrition in the NFL. Richard, you know that better than anybody. These injuries can come up at random at any time. And this Detroit Lion team is battling injuries right now. Hopefully they can get some key guys back entering the playoffs. But right now, the focus and goal of this franchise is to take that one seed so that they can have a first round bye and get healthy. They desperately need David Montgomery back. Today didn't matter, right? You're playing the Chicago Bears on the road. You're projected to win. You take care of business. But the reality is you're playing a division foe. Richard, you know all too well. It doesn't matter the record. When you play a division rival, especially on the road, it's anyone's game. And for the Detroit Lions to come out with their hair on fire and go up numerous scores early in this game, it was huge. You can't take more than what the Lions have had to overcome this season, and they keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And I don't know. I'm curious to know where your head's at with this Detroit Lions team. Despite the injuries, do you believe still that they are the NFC's best team at this point?
I don't think it's particularly close, and I don't. We watched what the Philadelphia Eagles were today without Jalen Hurts, obviously, but until they lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson, they're pretty old on defense, and Jalen Hurts doesn't play defense. So to see Jayden Daniels, a rookie quarterback, throw for 5 touchdowns against that defense was concerning. And it's concerning on a number of levels. They scored 36 points on this defense. So that's one of the strengths and has been a strength of this Philadelphia Eagles team down the stretch, and what we've started to really count on and really give them credit for. Even when Jalen Hurts struggled, it was Saquon Barkley who picked up all the extra, carried the extra weight. But I believe in this Detroit Lions team. I think it's inspiring what they're doing. It's inspiring that you talk about next man up mentality. It's been that, and that's what it is for Super Bowl caliber teams. You talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and what they overcome every single year. They lost Pacheco for a while. They put Kareem Hunt in there, and it was next man up. They lose a guy, they replace him. They lose a guy, they replace him, and the next man just keeps stepping up until they get to the Super Bowl. That's what Detroit is going to have to do, and it's unfortunate. Thankfully, they're saying David Montgomery isn't lost for the season. They're saying there's a chance that he can return, which would be huge. But right now, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have to carry the load, and that's what he's doing. And that's what he did today. 23 carries, 109 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 catches for 45 yards, impacted both phases of the offensive game plan. Jameson Williams with his best game, career high, 143 yards on 5 catches with the 1 touchdown. That's what you expected from him. And sometimes these injuries allow for other guys to flourish and other guys to develop. And these are still NFL players you got. You got to find more. You got to get other guys. Guys are going to have to step up. And it's going to be an inspirational story at the end of the day if the Detroit Lions can pull it all together and win a Super Bowl under these circumstances with everything against them. They're not making any excuses. They're just going out there and getting to work. This was a beautifully game-planned game. By both Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson. Again, the same thing that makes you laugh can make you cry. And hopefully the team is able to finish the job this year, because those coordinators are likely going to get head coaching jobs other places. You heard Ben Johnson earlier in the week talk about Caleb Williams and what makes him special and what he'd do and how he'd fix him. And, he hasn't looked at a lot of tape. And it's like, what are we saying, Ben Johnson? But I hear you. Focus on where your feet are. Focus on where your feet are. And that's what he said. He's saying all the right things. But that was very curious for me, Metro. That was very curious for me to hear. And Caleb Williams over the last 5 games, 63% completion percentage, 10 touchdowns, no interceptions, 101.9 passer rating. These are things that make me say, Now, he's gotten sacked a lot over those games, and I think he's held a lot of footballs he could have thrown away, which would have lowered that passer rating and things like that. And those are things the fans don't really know, but an offensive lineman would, because an offensive lineman is credited with those sacks, but the quarterback's not credited with an incompletion. Mitchell, you see how that works there? When a quarterback holds the ball and he doesn't have something, he could throw it away and live to fight another down, but they eat it so they can protect their passer rating and things of that nature. And offensive linemen have to deal with the sack numbers. So we'll get to that another time, but Caleb Williams throws for 334 yards, 2 touchdowns, ran it for 34 yards. But again, playing from behind most of this game, they were never really a threat in this game. Keenan Allen, the veteran, did have 9 catches for 141 yards and 1 touchdown on a double move, which I don't understand why you're biting on in this situation, but it is what it is. Our guy, Sonic, gets our Breitling Players in Prime Time, brought to you by our friends and partners over at Breitling. He had a heck of a game, Mitchell. They asked for more, and he delivered. He delivered more in both phases of the game, and I think he's going to continue to do that. He's going to continue to say, hey, if you don't have knuckles here, I can carry it. I can show you I'm a viable back. I am a Pro Bowl running back in the National Football League, and if you need me to be that, I will be that for every down, not just third down, not just passing situations. I will be it 100% of the time until my guy gets back. And I love the unselfishness of this locker room. Whatever it takes seems to be the mentality of everybody in this locker room. Mitchell, you got to be proud.
Richard, I am. And you know what I am proud about? I was just at the Breitling store, this week, flashing off my Honolulu Blue Breitling. And I'm pretty sure Jahmyr Gibbs has got a matching one of these. And they said the Detroit Lions Breitlings have sold out, my friend. But if you, yeah, Richard, that's how hot this team is right now. These bad boys have sold out. But if you are a fan of another team in the NFL and you want one, go get you one. Breitling's doing some special stuff with teams across the NFL. You guys got to check them out. But Richard, this team was laughed at. The Detroit Lions were laughed at for drafting Jahmyr Gibbs at number 12. And Brad Holmes said he would have drafted him at number 6 if they had stayed there, but they chose to trade back and they got him at 12. And it's showing why they did that. And obviously this team is wanting to grind it out and beat teams up between the tackles. Jahmyr Gibbs, they're going to have to lean on him quite a bit, down the stretch. They're going to have to go to San Francisco next week, Rich, on Monday Night Football, and they're going to have to get another dub. A redemption tour continues in San Francisco. Make right for that NFC Championship game. The Detroit Lions, they needed this win bad, and they got it. Richard, you love to see it. It's the most wonderful time of the year for getting in on all the hoops, football, and hockey action at DraftKings Sportsbook. In the season of giving, we're being gifted college football and basketball, pro football and basketball, and pro hockey too, almost 24/7. So many games every day, so many opportunities to place your first bet. Try betting on something simple, like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and place your bet now. And here's a gift for all new customers. Bet just $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code Richard. That's code Richard for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. When you bet just $5. Happy holidays from DraftKings. The crown is yours. But Richard, let's take it to your San Francisco 49ers, another team desperate for a win on the road in Miami. I know it's tough. And here comes the hat change, the infamous hat change to the San Francisco 49ers. Richard, this team needed it bad. They know the head coach from the Miami Dolphins all too well, but going on the road, especially from West Coast time zone to East Coast time zone, is not easy. And it didn't look easy out there for the San Francisco 49ers at all today. Miami had a field day. Devon Achane got wild on him for 121 yards. I don't know what's going on with Tyreek Hill, though, Rich. I want to start there with Tyreek before we get more into the San Francisco 49ers. What the hell is going on with Tyreek Hill? He puts out some cryptic tweet earlier today saying that I don't know if he wants out of town or if he wants a coaching position or what the hell's going on. But this Tyreek Hill does not look like the Tyreek Hill we've become accustomed to know. What's your mindset with Tyreek?
I don't know. I got to make some phone calls and try to figure it out. I got some guys on that coaching staff, but he doesn't look like the same guy. He's not making the same impact. He looks disinterested, and obviously you see all he's dropping some passes that he used to catch, and that's outside of all the social media theatrics. He's just not playing well, and they're winning almost in spite of him and his performances. Tua Tagovailoa, 22 of 34, 215, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, but they need more out of him, and they're starting to lean on guys like Geno Smith, who's had 6 catches for 62 yards, a couple crucial catches in that game. But Devon Achane also 6 catches for 70 yards, starting to become a real factor in the passing game. This was a tough one to watch, and I'm not sure what's going on with Tyreek Hill, but they didn't need him. They didn't need him today. Their defense put enough pressure on this San Francisco offense that's going to have to be a point of concern this offseason. Like, even with Trent Williams coming back, the rest of this offensive line needs to be talked about. It needs to be addressed. Like, there should not be unless we get rid of a couple guys, there should not be another position that they focus on more than the offensive line. And I know you can't just draft them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but that's what I would do. We're going to hit on one of them. Like, I'm focusing every bit of free agency, every bit of offensive line. defensive line. The rest of it, I think they got great guys there. Debo had a really good game, 7 catches for 96 yards, 5 rushes for 25 yards. He looked motivated. He looked passionate. He looked like a guy trying to prove a point, trying to make up. He literally caught the same pass that he dropped last week versus the Rams and took it for a touchdown. You could see fight through everything to get that touchdown. Had another big play on a 3rd down that got called back because of an illegal formation that really frustrated Kyle Shanahan. But at this point, this season is a wrap. Guys are playing for pride and playing to see who really wants to be on this team next year. Draft position is going to matter. Obviously, they got this game against Detroit, and they finish it off against the Arizona Cardinals. But now you got to focus on where you're drafting. I think they're 11th right now in draft order. And you need a right tackle. You're going to need a right tackle. That's not no ifs, ands, or buts, no discussion, no nothing. A right tackle. You need to figure out a center maybe in the 2nd round, a young center that can get, has an anchor, smart. There's plenty of them in the Big Ten somewhere to find them. Maybe one in the SEC. Find a center, and then maybe find a guard in free agency. It looks like you have one in Pooney. You got to put a competition out there at left guard, and the rest of it, I think you feel good about the pieces coming back, but that offensive line needs to be the number 1, number 2, and number 3 priority this offseason. If you're going to pay this quarterback all the money you're going to have to pay him, or if they decide to franchise him or whatever they're going to do, you want to keep him upright. You want to keep him upright so that he can be the playmaker that he has been. This year, he's been under a lot more duress. He's been using his legs more. He's had to leave the pocket more often than not. It hasn't been great, and a lot of it is because the offensive line hasn't been strong. And without Trent, it's looked even worse. Jalen Moore came out, and now it looks Spencer Buford went to left tackle, and it was a rough game in that regard. They put a lot of pressure. Jordan Brooks had a sack. Zach Sealer had a sack. Chop Robinson had a sack. And on the opposite side, the San Francisco 49ers defense had no sacks. And that's another concern because Tua Tagovailoa is one of the quarterbacks that gets the ball out quick because of his concussion issues, because of the things that he's had to deal with. But you got to find a way to get home. When receivers are covered up, you got to find a way to get turnovers. You got to find a way to impact this game. And there's no sacks, no turnovers in this game. That's a point of concern. But I think they got the right pieces in place. Obviously, gotta get Greenlaw healthier, him and Fred. You might have to find another pass rusher in free agency. I know, obviously, Javon Hargrave is a guy they paid a lot of money who hasn't been able to play. Injury took him out of the lineup, but that's somewhere else you're going to have to address further after the offensive line because there has been a lot of investment in defensive line. Again, Eric Armstead was a big deal, guys. He was.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't always show up on the stat sheet, and sure, he missed some games, but when he's in there, he makes an incredible impact on and off the stat sheet, and you're missing that. DeForest Buckner got traded away a couple years ago. I'm sure they'll look to maybe have a conversation with the Indianapolis Colts and see if they can bring him home. Perhaps that'd be a good move to make. But right now, this team is playing for pride, get through the end of the year healthy. There's not a lot of positives that come out of this game, only scoring 17 points. Kicker misses another kick. I think that's going to be a position they have to address. I think it should be Jake Moody should not be going in feeling comfortable about his job next season. I think there needs to be a competition all offseason long. There should not be comfort at the kicker spot. He did not play well enough, regardless of draft position. You have to bring kickers in here because that is a position where guys are a lot more efficient and reliable than he has been this season. And I know you can talk about injury, you can talk about this, you can talk about that, but this is the National Football League, and I'm sorry, the margin for error in that position is a lot less than every other position because of what it means, what it takes. Like, it's so much harder to do every other position. Now, it's not saying kicker's an easy position, but there are guys that become kickers a few years before they come into the National Football League and do the job at a high level. There are very few other positions in the National Football League you can just kind of learn as you go, kick a few balls, and then become an NFL kicker. You're not becoming an NFL corner that way. You're not just coming, hey, I never played sport, but let me get out here, cover a couple guys, and see what I got. Like, that possession is going to need to be addressed because, again, in this game could have been a lot closer with a made kick. I think that changes the trajectory, changes the thinking during some of these drives. But you're missing kicks consistently. It's almost like you're so unreliable. That's the only thing that's reliable about it is that you're probably going to miss. And you don't want to have that. You don't want to have that mindset going in as a coach when you're kicking field goals. You don't want to feel like you have to go for it. And Kyle doesn't take that on and take that mentality on and just go for it every time. But if you have a more reliable kicker, some of these outcomes would be different. So that's something that they're going to have to address again. The 49ers host the Lions next week in a game that the Lions are highly motivated for. And I don't know if San Francisco is as motivated, but they'll have to go out there and deal with the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions got something on their minds.
They do. And you talked about playing for pride, Richard. That's what the San Francisco 49ers are playing for, is pride. And I asked them to play for one pride, my Detroit Lions. Let's play for one pride here. And let's help the Detroit Lions secure that one seed in the NFC. Richard, you can't fault the 49ers for drafting Jake Moody. He was a stud at U of M. But you do have to question John Lynch's deciding to draft him in the third round, especially if you give up so much draft capital to move up and get Trey Lance, which has proven to be one of the bigger blunders in recent NFL, history here. Richard, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but in my role here, I got to put you on the spot. If you're John Lynch, how do you handle this Brock Purdy situation in the offseason? Because this is a turning point of this franchise, whether you want it to be or not. You pay the man, you franchise him. You have so many other positions of need at this point. The championship window is not closed in San Francisco. We've already talked about that. But the big question is Brock Purdy. Richard Sherman, put your GM hat on. How do you handle the Brock Purdy situation in San Francisco this offseason?
Well, they're gonna pay him. We pay him. You obviously are going to have to make some other decisions, probably restructure Fred, extend him, something along those lines. Same thing with George. Guys that you want here, guys that do things the right way. I hope people don't take that the wrong way. Restructure doesn't mean take money away or less money or anything like that. It will likely mean an extension and longer contracts for these guys, pushing their money out further, which will make their cap hits less for this year, which will change the way that you either make them less for this year or make them more for this year so that Brock's hits can be bigger later on. You figure out what the number is with Brock. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of guaranteed money in this deal. I hear people talking about the 3 for 100 that I think Kirk signed, or who signed the 3 for? Baker Mayfield signed. It's not going to be anything like that. And I don't think Sam Darnold is going to be anything like that. I don't think Sam Darnold signs for anything less than $150 million. But that's just me. And I definitely don't think Brock Purdy signs for anything less than $150 million guaranteed. That'll probably be low end of it. I think they'll make a decision about Javon Hargrave, what they want to do there, whether there's a salary reduction or a cut, depending on what the number looks like, the June 1st option. I think they'll look to either extend or renegotiate Charvarius Ward. There's a number of things they can do to get the money where it needs to be to have availability. This is not again, the people talk about the window being closed. It's nowhere near closed. And that's why they've managed it the way they have. That's why they structured these things the way they have. And I'm sure they'll leave themselves room to maneuver going forward. Obviously, Debo has another year on his contract. Brandon Ayuk will come back, hopefully healthy next season. You just extended Christian McCaffrey, so I think they'll leave that there. But I think, again, offensive line will be the thing that they focus on this offseason. Like, it has to be through both free agency and the draft. You have to address that, and you have to address it in a big way. You can't just be like, hey, we're just going to put guys out there and whoever. You need talented guys out there. It hasn't been good enough at the center position. It hasn't been good enough at the right tackle position. Hasn't been necessarily good enough at the left guard. The right guard showed promise, especially early on in the season, showed that he could be a really capable player. Obviously, it's his first year. We expect, him to be better next year, and you expect things to get better with time, but the rest of the positions need to be addressed in a big way. And you have to find a way to do that young. You have to find some young guys to get it done. That's how you continue to keep this championship window open. I know everybody wants to sit there and jump off the deep end and say, the window's closed, all is lost. It's not. It's not. These guys are a really talented team still. It's just been a bad year and a bad offensive line. They're going to make some changes. They're going to get healthier, and they're going to go in next year with a different hunger and a different mentality, and you're going to see a different team. And I expect this team to be a team that competes next year for the Super Bowl, competes to be at the top of this division. Obviously, this division is still up for grabs. If the Rams win next week against Arizona, I think that pretty much locks it up for them, regardless of what happens in Seattle, but against the Seattle Seahawks at the end of the year. But that's a story for a different day. But I don't think this window is closed. I think this is still a really talented team. I think they needed a reset. I think a lot of things have been weighing on them. A lot of the contract issues earlier in the season, a lot of the things coming in with holdouts multiple years in a row, deep playoff runs every single season, disappointment, hurt, frustration. These are humans. And so a reset, a good, stern, understanding, man-to-man conversations happening in this locker room. I think this team comes back with a renewed vigor, a renewed intensity, and ready to compete. And I think John Lynch will say the same thing. I think Kyle Shanahan will say the same thing. I look forward to seeing what they do next year and what they do in this offseason, because right now, it's not much to say. This season has been a disappointment on a lot of levels. I'm sure by both the staff, the fans, the players. Nobody expected this, but I don't think this is a reflection of how this is going to be or what the future is going to hold. You got to remember, this will be the first year in a number of years that this team isn't in an NFC Championship game or a Super Bowl. So give them a break. It happens.
Like you said, this roster is littered with Pro Bowl veterans. And once they get healthy, the San Francisco 49ers are still going to be a championship caliber team.
Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime Video. It's the best season yet, packed with big rivalries and even bigger stars. Join Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit, and Kaylee Hartung every week for the games you can't miss. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern with football's best party, TNF Tonight. Not a Prime member? Not a problem. Simply sign up for a 30-day free trial, and you can cancel at any time. It's Thursday Night Football, and it's on Prime Video. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details. It's time to take a look at this weekend's tastiest matchups in a segment we're calling Sunday Night Food Ball, brought to you by Uber Eats. You know what game it is. It's the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Washington Commanders. Philadelphia roared out to a commanding lead. They were up 27-14 at one point. It looked like this game, again, Washington was punching out of their weight class, and Philadelphia was going to walk away with this division again, walk away with this win, showed them who's the boss, et cetera, et cetera. But Jayden Daniels flipped the switch and really got after it. The Commanders won this game. He threw 5 touchdowns, despite the 5 turnovers they had on offense, which should have doomed them. It should have doomed them. Obviously, your Detroit Lions are the only other team this season to win a game after turning the ball over 5 times. That's just crazy. But sometimes it's your year. The Commanders only had 9 turnovers before this game. And so to have 5 in one game was crazy. But Saquon had a great first quarter, 7 carries for 109 yards. I think he had a 70-yard run for a touchdown. And he looked like the MVP. The Philadelphia Eagles looked like they were doing what they've done majority of this season, playing great defense, taking the ball away, and Saquon Barkley feeding him. They lost Jalen Hurts early on to a concussion. Kenny Pickett threw an interception a couple drives later. But after that, they looked like they settled in. He continued to do what they have been doing, feed A.J. Brown. They targeted him 15 times, only targeted everybody else 10 times. So, I guess, you know what I mean?
A.J. Brown had to love it, Richard.
I had to love it. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, Mitchell.
And you know what? This marks the return of Is Kenny Pickett? Yes, he can.
Yes, he can. Kenny Pickett. Yes, he can.
Yes, he
can. He
can.
throw a pick? Yes, he can.
Yes, he can.
Mitchell, you knew Kenny Pickett was going to throw a pick, but he played solid. You know, I think after that interception, they played a lot more conservatively with him. He only threw the ball 24 times for 143 yards, the one touchdown, the one interception, only completed it to 3 receivers. And Devontae Smith had a really critical drop in this game that was uncharacteristic. That was one of those plays I'm sure he wants back that could have gave them a chance to win this game. Reed Blankenship had an interception. C.J. Gardner-Johnson had the interception, got kicked out of the game for a play. I don't really know what happened, and I don't really know if I agree with it. Nobody really explained it to me, and I gotta go back and look and see if they got a better explanation post game of what happened. But it looked like he got his helmet mushed off, and I know the ref was standing right there, so whatever he said was worthy of an unsportsmanlike penalty. But then to get your helmet mushed off and the other guy not get anything, I just didn't get that. I know life is hard enough on defensive players, and yes, I'm biased. Just like everybody, the whole world is biased for offensive players, so somebody got to be biased the other way. It's disgusting, and some of those PI calls, that's another thing. Those PI calls on Lattimore were absolute horseshit. Absolute horseshit. I'm so tired of this game getting so soft and ridiculous and people having the audacity to complain about it. Like, how are those PIs? Like, if the receiver's physical, then you have to let the DB at least defend himself from it. Don't be praising these receivers for being, oh, man, he's so physical. He's so strong. You look how physical he is at the catch point. And you see him pushing the corner in the neck and pushing him off and grabbing him by the collar. And then when the corner gets his hands off of him, you're like, oh, my God, you can't grab him. That's illegal. You can't grab him. What about him grabbing me by the neck while running his route? Because everything's acceptable for a receiver to do, but there's nothing acceptable for a corner to do. Let the boys play. Let the boys play. Or call offensive PI. If you're not going to call offensive PI, you got to let the boys play. I'm tired of these penalties that they're calling almost back to back to back, punishing corners for covering these receivers when they're quote unquote physical. And it's like, I don't know what you want him to do. You want him to stay close to him while he's getting pushed around and not grab him back. It's like, have you ever been punched in the face and then just kept getting punched in the face? And then they're like, hey, don't worry. We'll if he punches you in the face one more time, we'll say something. They're not. And it's hard to play that way. He has a team to play for. Thank God the Washington Commanders were able to come out with a win because those penalties were disappointing, to say the least.
No question about it. And Richard, I know I've followed you for your entire career, and I too am biased. But objectively speaking, I think it's hard to argue against the fact that cornerback position is the hardest position to play in all of sports. You are expected to go against these top flight athletes that can do anything they want after 5 yards, right? They can do anything they want. They can hand fight you. They can shove you. They can do anything they want. And if you lay a fingertip on them, you're getting a flag thrown at you. It's getting ridiculous. Kudos to the Washington Commanders. And this is a huge win for them. It seemed that the trajectory of their season had plateaued, right? It was this beautiful crescendo of, oh my God, Jayden Daniels is the second coming of CJ Stroud. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, that rookie wall kind of was hit. And now to see them take this win, albeit without Jalen Hurts on the opposing side of the field. I mean, that's a huge injury. Let's not undersell that. I mean, Jalen Hurts going out impacted this game mightily. The Philadelphia Eagles had this game in control prior to that injury. And kudos to the future gold jacket wearing middle linebackers, one of the GOATs in the game, Bobby Wagner, with a huge pass breakup on Saquon Barkley late in that contest. Bobby poked that ball out Saquon's arms. It was a dime to Saquon, falling to the ground. Bobby smacked it out. You got to give a shout out to one of your best buds, Rich, Bobby Wagner, keeping it rolling here with the Washington Commanders. Bias aside, I know you're buddies of Bobby's. How much fear would you have playing Washington week 1 if you are say the Minnesota Vikings, say the Detroit Lions, say the Philadelphia Eagles in the playoffs?
Well, you got to have a little bit of fear because the quarterback has none. And that's the thing about young quarterbacks that you gotta be careful with because they don't know any better. Older veteran quarterbacks get in there and they panic sometimes. They don't play well. They throw the game away because they're thinking too much. They're like paralysis by analysis. But young guys, sometimes, not all the time, because obviously there's young guys that go to the playoffs and go home. And it's like, hey, good try. You're a young quarterback and you learned. But if you're not playing against a really crazy elite or complex scheme like Flores or like Todd Bowles, who's going to give you a lot of crazy exotic looks in the playoffs, I give him a puncher's chance because you got a young quarterback who can be really efficient and can catch fire like he did in this game against the Philadelphia Eagles that isn't scared of the moment. You got veteran receivers, Zacchaeus, who had 2 touchdowns today. Obviously, Terry McLaurin, who can get the job done, set the franchise record for receiving touchdowns with 12 this year, but has his fifth consecutive 1,000-yard season. They can get it done. A veteran tight end and Zach Ertz, a defense that is getting a little bit better and learning to play together and got a lot better by getting a cornerback that they needed. I think they're going to be a team that if they get the right matchups, it's going to be a nail biter for one of these teams.
That has been this week's Sunday Night Football, brought to you by our friends and partners at Uber Eats, the official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Uber Eats has the best game day deals all season long. Order now for game day. Let's talk about the Bills. Today, they play the lowly New England Patriots. They get down 14 points early, and they narrowly escape defeat against a division rival. Richard, you've played in this league a number of years, and you know how big division foes and opponents are. But riddle me this. How in the world does this Buffalo Bills team go on the road against Detroit, beat one of the best, if not the best team in the NFL on their home turf, return back home as a 14-point favorite against the lowly New England Patriots, and have a dogfight? And not to mention, Josh Allen doesn't look like the second coming of an MVP candidate. He looks more like that. Who was the quarterback? Peterman that played with the Buffalo Bills. He looks more like the second coming of Peterman with the Buffalo Bills. I don't get it with this. How does this happen? Because the Buffalo Bills to me looked like the team to beat after last Sunday, and now they just look like a good team / decent team. They still come out with a W. But Richard, it did not come without a tremendous fight against a 3-1 Patriot team.
Complacency and human nature. They knew they had this Detroit game scheduled. They had it circled. They got hyped for it. They got up for it. They gave everything they had. And then you look up and you say, New England Patriots, they're a 3-win team. Like we can take it easy here. And although, you may say all the right things in the media, you may say all the right things in practice. You may practice regular. Clearly, your performance says you overlooked them. Clearly, your performance says you didn't respect them. You didn't think they would be an opponent that would give you a challenge. And this was a game Josh Allen needed to be Josh Allen, and he wasn't. And his defense stepped up enough, made enough plays to help him get the win. And I know Buffalo fans are sitting there arguing in my comments every week. He's the MVP. How do you not think? How do you think anything else? Because games like this happen. And when they happen, you question it. You question like, hey, threw for 151 yards this game, a touchdown and an interception, ran it for 28 yards, did enough to win the game, sure. But you keep saying he has no help when Cook had 11 carries for 110 yards in this game. And so when they say he doesn't have any help, he doesn't have any running backs, he doesn't have anybody behind him, and then you look up and Cook is having 100-yard games after 100-yard games, and you're like, wait a minute now. Wait a minute. Is it no help or is it help? Because his defense is playing pretty well. Sometimes they didn't play well against Detroit because they gave up 42 points, but they played well in this game when he had to have it. When they had to have stops, when they had to get stops, they got them. They held this team to 21 points. Now, it's not a great team. They were down 14-0 at one point, but games like this, MVPs are won in December. And if you looked up, and Joe Burrow doesn't have a chance. But his numbers say he should.
They're silly.
His numbers say he should have a chance, Mitchell. They don't have a chance, but his numbers say he should have a chance. He has 39 touchdowns passing, 8 interceptions, 4,200 yards. Those are MVP numbers any other season, and he still has 2 games to go. True Classic's ultra comfortable, perfect fitting essentials make for the perfect gift for guys this holiday season. They have premium products at an affordable price. Their shirts define your best features with a perfect fit. Snug in the arms and the chest with just the right amount of room in the midsection. They have 100% perfect fit guarantee and easy returns. If you're into working out like me, True Classic also has active wear with moisture wicking, quick dry, and odor control. The holidays are here, and True Classic's ultra comfortable, perfect fitting essentials make for the perfect gift for you and the men in your life. So if you're ready to upgrade your closet, shop now and unlock big savings during the huge holiday sale. Just go to my exclusive link at trueclassic.com/Richard to save. That's trueclassic.com/Richard. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. End the year with holiday cheer thanks to True Classic.
Let me paint a picture for you, Richard, because the Bengals, I'm here to tell you guys, the Bengals are not out of the playoff picture just yet. They got a glimmer of hope. They play the Denver Broncos next week, and then they need the Broncos to lose against the Kansas City Chiefs. If the Bengals can win out and the Broncos lose out, Richard, dare I say Joe Burrow has a shot at the MVP after all if they sneak into this playoffs?
You may not say that, Mitchell, because he does not. I wish. I would be with you, Mitchell. I would be with you, but he does not. That is not enough for an MVP unless, his numbers would have to be really, 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 really insane. But
really, Richard, but they have been really, 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 really insane up to this point. So that's my point. If he can bring this team back and sneak them into the playoffs, no one's going to want to play Cincinnati round 1 if they can sneak in. Absolutely no one. So how can you tell me with these really, really, really insane stats that Joe Burrow is putting up that he will not have do I dare go Tony Romo? GM Richard, are you sure? Joe Burrow. Give him a shooter shot here.
Because this is why, Mitchell. Because there are very few quarterbacks, if any. I got to look at it. I don't think a quarterback has had 35 plus touchdowns and under 5 interceptions thrown on the season like Lamar Jackson has and not won it. Mitchell, it hasn't happened yet. It's going to happen this year because they keep telling me Josh Allen's going to win it. And last year they told me Lamar was going to win it when I said, how? And I'm saying it with Josh Allen. How? Like, I know you guys want the numbers to be numbering, but they're not. Lamar Jackson is a second in touchdown passes, a second in yards, 4 interceptions on the season. How? And I think he has 40 total, maybe 41 total touchdowns. How? How can he not get it? Mitchell, how can he not get it? Actually, he has 40 total touchdowns. So let me not misquote because I know what they are. So he has 40 total touchdowns, 37 of them passing, 3,700 passing yards, which will probably end up being 4,300 or so. He'll likely get to 40 or so touchdown passes. So if he gets to 40, let's call it, if he has 2 and 2, 41. If he throws for 41 touchdown passes and only has 4 or 5 interceptions, and they're the 3 seed, you're telling me that's not the MVP of the league? If you're telling me that, then you got to show me the numbers that support that, because all I keep hearing is look at the tape, look at the eye test. Well, am I still taking the eye test? Because I watched the game today, and that eye test didn't look as good. That eye test, that you're not passing that test by my eye. Like, that's not an MVP. And if it has to be every week, either it's like, because now the goalposts are going to move for people. They're going to tell me that it has to be record. But record matters when you're the 1 seed. Like, it matters if you're going to be the 1 seed in the conference. If you're not the 1 seed, then you're just everybody else. You're playing a playoff game. You're playing in a wild card just like everybody else. So that really doesn't differentiate you that much. Lamar was the 1 seed. That's why he got it. His record had him as in his team as the 1 seed, clearly the best team. And when they had to have that game against the San Francisco 49ers that everybody circled and needed him to have a big game, he had a great game. He had 5 touchdown passes. Like, he had the game he needs to have. Give him the trophy. They gave him the trophy. Now, you could say, did Josh have a good game against the Detroit Lions that he needs to have? 100%. And then he used the restroom in the bed this game of sorts. To use easier language.
I pick up what you're putting down. I smell what you're saying, Rich.
Yeah. I smelled what he was putting out there this week. And that's the difference. Like, they aren't the number 1 seed, and they aren't the number 1 seed on either side. It ain't like, oh, if they were in the NFC, they'd be the 1 seed. They wouldn't be. They'd be the 3. There's 3 teams. There's 2 teams in the NFC North with better records in them. Your Detroit Lions, the Minnesota Vikings, and then you got the Philadelphia Eagles with the same record as them. So again, this isn't even the best record in the National Football League, so the record argument doesn't really compute. So if the eye test doesn't compute, the numbers don't compute. What's computing? They keep telling me he's breaking records, but the records I'm seeing is Lamar Jackson is breaking records. And they're going to continue to be broken. And again, if you just keep looking and they're going to keep putting the graphic out, there's a graphic out there, 35 plus touchdowns, under 5 interceptions, MVP is what they are awarded to those players. I'm sorry, Buffalo fans, that's not me making it up. That's what it's been. Now, can it change? Sure. Does it make sense to change it? It doesn't, unless Lamar Jackson does not play well over these next 2 games and Josh Allen plays out of his mind, and maybe the Kansas City Chiefs lose 2 games. Buffalo grabs the 1 seed. Everything points to Josh Allen carrying the MVP trophy out. But if that doesn't happen, and Lamar Jackson has 2 decent games where he doesn't throw an interception, he throws for 2 touchdowns, maybe runs for 1, throws for 2, runs for 1 again, you're going to have a hard argument saying a guy with 46 total touchdowns and 4 interceptions, doesn't deserve the MVP. I'm sorry.
We shall see, Richard. There's a couple games left here, and it's still a battle for that MVP. Let's talk a little bit about the New York Football Jets, not the Giants, and the LA Rams. Vegas did not like this game so much for the Rams. They only favored them by 3 points. And we saw it potentially as a trap game for the LA Rams, going on the road again, going across coast to a very cold environment in New York. And the Jets, Jets looked like the team to beat early on. And kudos to this LA Rams team being able to pull it off in the 4th quarter. You saw Tyler Higbee come back. Thank God he's back after the devastating knee injury he took in Detroit last year with a game-winning touchdown pass from Matthew Stafford. This marks 4 wins in a row, 5 of 6 for the LA Rams. This LA Rams team is getting hot at the right time, similar to how they did last year. Like, how much do you believe in the LA Rams, entering this playoffs in the NFC with the Detroit Lions injured, the Philadelphia Eagles facing adversity late in the season with Jalen Hurts going down with a concussion? Obviously, the Minnesota Vikings still playing competitive, but can we throw the LA Rams hat in the ring as true contenders in the NFC?
Well, give Chris Shula a lot of credit for taking the lowest paid defense in the National Football League and making something out of it. Held their last 2 opponents under 10 points back-to-back weeks. It's impressive to do that. Shout out to Akello Witherspoon, made some really good plays this week and last week, playing out of his mind, starting to play like the guy that I think everybody in San Francisco knew he could be. Anytime Stafford's in it, all bets are off with me, Mitchell. I'm not betting on that guy. I'm not betting against him. I'm not betting with him because he gonna make it shake. And the way Puka Nacua is playing, the way Cooper Kupp continues to play, and if they find a way to get Tutu Atwell out there as much as they can, they can do something cool. Tyler Higbee's back. That's a guy who Stafford has liked during his time in LA. Obviously, Kyron Williams and the way he's been running the ball. If they're playing good defense and offensively scheming it up like they have, anything's possible in these playoffs. And none of these teams look totally unbeatable. None of these teams look like they're world beaters. They run into the right matchup. They can find a way, Mitchell. They run into the Minnesota Vikings in the first round. Who knows? They'll be at home. You know, if they can win this division, they'll be at home in LA playing the Minnesota Vikings. They're not having to go to elements. You put Stafford in that stadium in SoFi, anything's possible, Mitchell. And they're playing good defense. They believe, you know, they got the underdog mentality. They're playing with house money. Why not?
Saturday, we had two showcase games. I mean, the NFL couldn't have dreamed up two better games to have on this Saturday slate. Kansas City Chiefs hosting the Houston Texans was the first one. And Mahomes supposedly had a high ankle sprain. Everyone was saying, oh my gosh, he's so bruised and battered. And you know, the Houston Texans are going to take advantage of him, et cetera, et cetera. It certainly didn't look like it out there. Patrick Mahomes had one of his better games on the season in terms of just controlling this game early and often. He threw for 260 yards, had a rushing TD early in this game. He got Xavier Worthy involved heavily. You hate to see Tank Dell go out with the injury he did. The Houston Texans are just battling injuries in their wide receiving core. You're hearing rumors that Odell Beckham Jr. might join that fold. We shall see, but the Chiefs just keep on winning and winning and winning and winning and winning. And say it with me, Richard. And winning. And winning. They cannot find a way to lose. Richard, what's it going to take to beat this Kansas City Chiefs team?
It's going to take some pass rushes. It's going to take not missing sacks on Patrick Mahomes. It's going to take mistake-free football. And, you know, they moved Tooney out to left tackle. They switched Caliendo into guard to replace Tooney, and they're shuffling this offensive line to make things work. But you see, it's creating more issues. They're getting more interior pressure from the defense than they used to give up with Tooney on the inside. So I think the teams are going to have to get home, and it's going to take Highsmith, T.J. Watt, Cam Hayward, Preston Smith to really show what is capable, what teams can be capable of if they attack these tackles and find a way to win inside and not miss sacks on Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, that ankle isn't in too bad a shape. He ran a lot this game. He used his legs a lot. He got out of bounds. He got himself to safety. There's a little bit of limping, but he had 33 rush yards. He had the rushing touchdown from I think at least 15 yards out. Took a hit in that, got up, kept going. Kareem Hunt, 11 carries, 55 yards in the touchdown. Xavier Worthy, they found ways to get him the ball in the run game and the pass game. Our guy, friend of the program, Trent McDuffie, back-to-back games with an interception. Congrats to him. I told him we'd have him back if he got his first interception. He's got two. So we got to get him on the schedule. We got to talk about it before these playoffs. They're going to get the bye, so maybe we can catch him in the bye week. Jaden Hicks also had an interception, but I think C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans played a really good game. They just ran out of steam. Emotions got to them when Tank Dell had that tragic injury that looked horrible, and don't ever replay it. I don't want to see it. You know, I think that took their hearts. You know, they continue to go out there and play, but football's an emotional game when you care about people that you're playing with. And I think that took an emotional toll on this team, especially on the quarterback. You could see him visibly hurt and frustrated by it. That matters. I'm sorry. I know how much people want these people to be robots, but they're not. They're not robots. They're human beings, and you could see the connection and the camaraderie and the brotherhood that he and Tank Dell have had. I think he was a big reason that the Houston Texans drafted Tank Dell. I think they've developed a friendship. Obviously, he cares about that human being a tremendous amount. He felt like he put him in harm's way. Tank Dell did everything he could to bring that pass in to at least make it a touchdown. Went out the major injury. We still haven't got a lot of information on that. But things like that take an emotional toll on the team, you know, and it can send you one way and you go out there and fight for your teammate. But I think it sent this young team into shock a little bit. Obviously, Nico Collins coming back has helped them. Tank Dell had 6 catches for 98 yards and a touchdown before he left. They're going to have to find a way to replace that kind of production. Obviously, you just said Odell Beckham Jr. might be called. I'm not sure if he has what he used to have in the tank, but it'll be better than what they have without Tank Dell, without Stephon Diggs, who they came into the season with. They're going to need some help to get some of that production back. But your prayers up to Tank Dell, and hoping that he can get that fixed and that he comes out and heals quickly and is able to get back out there playing the game that he loves, because that was a devastating injury. C.J. Stroud was visibly shaken up, and that changes the complexity of the game. Chiefs have now won 16 straight one-possession games. I told you, Mitchell, they could get put out in the divisional, or they could win the Super Bowl by a field goal walking off. You don't really know. They found a way to win every other game. At this point, it's not luck. They got a system, and they're executing.
No question. And they get Hollywood Brown back here soon. I see they activate him off IR, at least activated his practice window. We'll see how that transpires. Both of these teams are going to be playing on Christmas Day. They only got a couple days to recover. Chiefs at Steelers. The Texans host the Ravens. It's going to be an awesome Christmas. Richard, let's talk a little bit about that Baltimore Ravens-Steelers game. This game was tight. It could have gone either way, and then you talked about it. Lamar Jackson kind of took over late and ultimately blew this game wide open. The Baltimore Ravens go home a victor 34-17, but it was tied. It was tied early in the second half, and Pittsburgh overcame some adversity, down 10 late in that first half, and ultimately tied it up. But Baltimore comes away the victor. To me, this Baltimore team is starting to fire at the right time, because you look at Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and the maturity of Zay Flowers. And Mark Andrews is finally healthy, and Isaiah Likely. There's so many contributors to this Ravens team. I would be putting some money on Baltimore to come away with the AFC crown. I really like what they've got going here. And to take down a division foe that has really beaten up on them quite a bit. The Ravens have beat the Steelers just twice in the last 10 games. And to them to double them up this Saturday, it was impressive to me. Richard, how much do you like the Ravens right now?
I really like them. And I like what they're doing because they're running Derrick Henry. He had 24 carries for 162 yards. And I said this earlier in the season. Run it. That's the formula. Obviously, Lamar Jackson makes his impact, throws the football all around the yard. He has his impact running it when he has to. Derrick Henry, 20-plus carries. 20-plus carries. I believe they have a high probability of winning that game. It's not foolproof. You still have to do other things right. They still needed to play good defense, and they did. Marlon Humphreys, who's having an all-pro season, even despite missing a couple games, having an all-pro season, had a 37-yard pick six that blew this game open. Russell had the fumble in the red zone on an incredible run, on an incredible scramble that took points off the board. The last 9 games have been decided by 7 points or fewer between these teams. This game, obviously, 17-point win by the Baltimore Ravens. A lot of it came because of those turnovers. But a guy that's made a lot of money by not playing, George Pickens. George Pickens, this offense has averaged 19 points a game the 3 weeks without George Pickens. George Pickens is out with a hamstring, and sometimes your value shows when you're not there. Sometimes absence makes the heart grow fonder, and I don't think Pittsburgh fans could be any more fond of George Pickens than they are right now, because they know how much they need him in order for this offense to go. I think they appreciate the way he impacts the game a lot more right now than they ever have before. And they're going to need him healthy in the playoffs to make a run, because they're stumbling, and they have a game in 3 days against the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think hopefully he's back for that game. I think that's going to be a dogfight, even if he is back, because the Kansas City Chiefs are trying to lock up home field advantage so they can rest Patrick Mahomes in that ankle for 2 weeks before they have a divisional game. But their D-line isn't going to just give up. Alex Highsmith had a sack in this game. He had a lot of pressures over there on Ronnie Staley. But Minkah Fitzpatrick had an interception. Their defense is still capable of getting things done. the things that make Russell Wilson really picture perfect for this offense is when their running game is reliable with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, and he's able to drop back, push the ball down the field, play mistake-free football, don't give the ball to the other team, and they can win these games. But when you turn the ball over, you throw a pick six, you fumble the ball in your red zone, that's when these games can get out of hand. So again, I think they understand the formula. He understands the formula. You got to take care of the football. They got to be able to run the ball better than they did this game. And defensively, they got to give them a few more cracks at it. Obviously, the Minkah Fitzpatrick interception was one, but they need another one. And that's going to be their formula for winning these playoffs and getting the upset. But you're right. Baltimore Ravens are playing as good as anyone right now. And that AFC is up for grabs. I don't think you feel like the Kansas City Chiefs are a juggernaut. I don't feel like the Buffalo Bills are a juggernaut. I don't think the Baltimore Ravens are afraid to go to Buffalo and run the ball and play in the cold, the frigid. I don't think they're scared to go into Kansas City and play in the frigid cold. I think they're more than likely going to have to go to Buffalo, seeing at how things are going to shake out right now. But I think Baltimore would be favored in that game with Derrick Henry and what he's been able to do. And, depending on how Buffalo ends this season.
Well, Richard, we're almost at the finish line of this regular season. Week 16 is almost over. I will let you sign us off, my friend.
Well, it's been a great week, a great weekend of football. Thank you guys for joining us as always, whether you stayed for a minute, an hour, or the entire thing. We sincerely appreciate you. I hope you have a merry, very merry Christmas with your family and friends. Eat a lot of good food. Enjoy some more football. Love and respect from the Richard Sherman podcast. We sure do appreciate you. Happy holidays. Hit that sub button if you're new. I judge the quality of a fragrance by the compliments you get. When I wore Ovation for the first time, second time, and third time, usually I walk past somebody and they're like, hey, what you got on? Who over there smelling good? That's the injection of confidence right there to you.
That's right. We want to be at the forefront of using the brand as a gateway for these young athletes. Custom suit, we do a photo shoot, we do a video, and it's all about that partnership to create a personal brand.
And I love you guys associating it with more sophistication. Throwing a suit on a kid, sometimes it takes for you to see yourself with a suit on in the mirror to be like, hey, I have more to offer.
Ovation for Men, we're part of Amazon's Black Business Accelerator. Amazon has invested $150 million for the next 4 years to uplift small businesses like myself to scale. Amazon is really putting their money where their mouth is.
They're committed to excellence on every level. They want to scale these businesses to be amongst the best in whatever industry they're in.
You've always been authentic. You've always been pushing excellence.
Well, I appreciate that.
As our slogan says, every man deserves an ovation.
Yes, sir.
Listen, this relationship with Ovation for Men, Richard Sherman, the volume, this is just the beginning.
I appreciate you guys letting me be a part of your journey. If you haven't already checked them out, go out there, get your man some. And get the sport too. And it can be Christmas, birthday, holidays, or yesterday. But make sure you get it.